Good evening, and welcome to Haunted Hallowmas. My name is Leah LaMalfa, and I have the pleasure of being your Mistress of Ceremonies. We are grateful that you have joined us for this eerie event that remains unique to the Menominee Opera House, yet is rather fitting for the season. Tonight, we gather to keep the festive spirit of Halloween alive through song and storytelling, as well as celebrate the release of the 4th issue of Elvelon Press's horror anthology, Outpost 28. My brother, local author and playwright Leah LaMalfa, is not only thrilled to have 2 original works published in Outpost 28, but to have the opportunity to share those stories with you alongside his friends and fellow thespians Tristan Shu and Noah Steffen. Never before has a book release been conducted within these weathered walls, so count yourself among the first of this tradition. While you are doing so, let your imagination run wild as you picture the past in your mind's eye, focusing on this small corner of the world more than 100 years ago. Live theater reached its golden age at the turn of the 20th century, and as theatrical companies brought their Broadway repertoires to the hinterlands, Midwest audiences could boast of seeing the big stars in their own hometown. When it was built in 1902, the Menominee Opera House was the pride and joy of the city, a visible symbol of the economic and cultural status attained. It was certainly splendid enough to justify its description as a thing of rare beauty by the Daily Herald newspaper. The building itself could seat 1,000 patrons between the main floor and 2 balconies, and was made of an estimated 600,000 bricks and 100,000 board feet of white pine lumber. Upon its stage, where you now sit, stock companies and roadshows were standard fare until movies became popular. Thereafter, the Opera House adapted itself to the changing state of entertainment, shifting to motion pictures during the 1920s, community theater in the 1930s, and back to motion pictures in the post-World War II era. In 1950, the Opera House was gutted by fire, after which the mezzanine balcony was removed, sloping floor and understage filled in with sand, and level concrete floor poured. The building was used as a warehouse until 1973, when the fire-damaged roof over the stage collapsed. Following this, the Opera House lay derelict until 1981, when it was purchased by the Menominee family. The rough structure over the stage was rebuilt, the entire building re-roofed, and the brickwork repaired. In this condition, it remained dormant and unused for a quarter century. In 2004, the Menominee family generously gifted the building to the newly formed Menominee Opera House project. Since then, this group has evolved into the Menominee Opera House Committee Incorporated, a nonprofit corporation formed for the purpose of restoring and operating this space as a performing arts center. So, here we are, in the Opera House, on the day after Halloween, whose origins date back to the ancient Celtic festival of Samhain, a Gaelic word pronounced Samhain. The Celts, who lived 2,000 years ago, mostly in the area that is now Ireland, the United Kingdom, and northern France, celebrated their new year on November 1st. This day marked the end of summer and the harvest, and the beginning of the dark, cold winter, a time of year that was often associated with death. Celts believed that on the night before the new year, the boundary between the worlds of the living and the dead became blurred. On the night of October 31st, they celebrated Samhain, when it was believed that the ghosts of the dead returned to the earth. In addition to causing trouble and damaging crops, Celts thought that the presence of the otherworldly spirits made it easier for the Druids or Celtic priests to make predictions about the future. For a people entirely dependent on the volatile natural world, these prophecies were an important source of comfort during the long, dark winter. To commemorate the event, Druids built huge sacred bonfires where the people gathered to burn crops and animals as sacrifices to the Celtic deities. During the celebration, the Celts wore costumes, typically consisting of animal heads and skins, and attempted to tell each other's fortunes. When the celebration was over, they relit their hearth fires, which they had extinguished earlier that evening from the sacred bonfire to help protect them during the coming winter. By 43 AD, the Roman Empire had conquered the majority of Celtic territory. In the course of the 400 years that they ruled the Celtic lands, 2 festivals of Roman origin were combined with the traditional Celtic celebration of Samhain. The first was Feralia, a day in late October when the Romans traditionally commemorated the passing of the dead. The second was a day to honor Pomona, the Roman goddess of fruit and trees. The symbol of Pomona is the apple, and the incorporation of this celebration into Samhain probably explains the tradition of bobbing for apples that is practiced today on Halloween. On May 13, 609 AD, Pope Boniface IV dedicated the Pantheon in Rome in honor of all Christian martyrs, and the Catholic feast of All Martyrs' Day was established in the Western Church. Pope Gregory III later expanded the festival to include all saints as well as all martyrs, and moved the observance from May 13th to November 1st. By the 9th century, the influence of Christianity had spread into Celtic lands, where it gradually blended with and supplanted older Celtic rites. In 1000 AD, the Church made November 2nd All Souls' Day, a day to honor the dead. It's widely believed today that the Church was attempting to replace the Celtic festival of the dead with a related church-sanctioned holiday. All Souls' Day was celebrated similarly to Samhain, with big bonfires, parades, and dressing up in costumes as saints, angels, and devils. The All Saints' Day celebration was also called All Hallows, or All Hallowmas, from Middle English All Hallowmas, meaning All Saints' Day. And the night before it, the traditional night of Samhain in the Celtic religion, began to be called All Hallows' Eve, and eventually Halloween. The celebration of Halloween was extremely limited in colonial New England because of the rigid Protestant belief systems there. Halloween was much more common in Maryland and the southern colonies. As the beliefs and customs of different European ethnic groups and the American Indians meshed, a distinctly American version of Halloween began to emerge. The first celebrations included play parties, which were public events held to celebrate the harvest. Neighbors would share stories of the dead, tell each other's fortunes, dance, and sing. Colonial Halloween festivities also featured the telling of ghost stories and mischief-making of all kinds. By the middle of the 19th century, annual autumn festivities were common, but Halloween was not yet celebrated everywhere in the country. In the second half of the 19th century, America was flooded with new immigrants. These new immigrants, especially the millions of Irish fleeing the Irish potato famine, helped to popularize the celebration of Halloween nationally. On All Souls' Day in medieval Great Britain and Ireland, it used to be customary for children and the poor to go out souling. They would travel from door to door, begging for pastries with crosses on them called soul cakes. Sometimes they were given fruit or coins instead. As with Halloween and the Day of the Dead, symbolically, these were treats put out for the dead to appease their souls when they came back to the earth for a day. It was also a promise from the person receiving the soul cakes to pray for the dead relatives of the people who gave out the soul cakes to help their relatives' souls go from purgatory to heaven. And thus, we may have ourselves an explanation for how the custom of trick-or-treating came to be. Now, here's a song that those out souling would sing on All Souls' Day when they were begging